Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, we have with us Don Frericks. Don knows the exhilaration of working with a good leader and the unrelenting pain of working for a bad one. In over 30 years of corporate leadership and coaching experience, he has developed a reputation as an outstanding leader, a passionate advocate for personal and corporate change, and a well-loved personal leadership coach for various Fortune 2000 organizations and industries. So plug your earphones in, relax in your seats, and just let's sit back and enjoy this wonderful episode with Don. So Don, could you share with us a little bit about your journey? You know, in reading your bio, I noticed that you have been in this industry of leadership for over 30 years. That's a long time, which means you have a lot of wisdom and nuggets and insights that you can definitely impart on the new and emerging leader or even leaders who have been in the business for a long time. But just tell us how it is that you really got into this leadership path. Were you put into it by accident? Did it happen by chance? Or is this something that was a passion for you from you were a young person?
It's a great question, Yannick. I love it because it's not a normal path. I actually had three wonderful experiences working for tremendous leaders, people that just were inspiring, that you wanted to follow them because they were so good with people and they helped you be the best that you could be. And what was interesting in each one of those occurrences, they were the one that hired me, but they were gone in my experience 6 months later. And it was so abrupt and so quick that it was a bit shocking. And the next leader that came in behind them was not as good. And in fact, in a few cases, they were horrible. Those kind of people you would say would be the bad bosses of the world. Mm-hmm. And it was such a night and day difference. It shocked me to my very core. And I noticed my own behavior, my own performance slipped. I noticed that I didn't like it. I wasn't engaged like I used to be. I work at a very high level. I put a lot of energy and heart into my work, and I wasn't doing that with these other bosses. So I really felt like there's something about great leadership and how it has a huge impact on other people. And after that experience and through those experiences, I started studying tremendous leadership and extraordinary leadership and what the difference is between good and extraordinary and why it makes a huge difference on businesses.
Brilliant. So it's definitely been in your core, in your DNA from very early. Now, I see here on your bio also that you're the author of the book Best Boss Ever. And, you know, this podcast is called Navigating the Customer Experience. As you know, one of the things I've found in the years of being a customer service trainer is that leadership is very critical in customer experience, because if the leaders are not on board with delivering a quality experience, both internally, because it starts from within, and then of course it flows over into the external, you're going to have a lot of challenges in the organization. So could you share with us maybe 2 or 3 character traits that you think leaders need to have, especially now? You know, I mean, you wrote the book Best Boss Ever. So what are those 2 or 3 qualities that leaders need to have to ensure that during this time, they're still maintaining a high level of customer centricity internally and externally?
No doubt. You're right on track with thinking about how dynamic a situation can be internally. Yannick, I'm sure you've seen many times where people have talked about the power of serving the employee so that they can serve the customers so well. And right, great leaders today get that. They understand that their service of their people internally needs to be taken to the next level. And that probably means getting to know your people at a level where you understand their emotional needs and understanding how they're dealing with all the challenges with the pandemic and the other things that are happening in our environment. So it's not as if it is, they're missing the point and they're missing an opportunity to connect heart to heart with their own employees. And that will prevent their employees from reaching out to the customer in such a way that that experience that I know you're an expert in is at the highest level. And so we have to take care of our people, and that's the leader's job.
All right. So could you share with us maybe 2 or 3 traits that the leaders need to have?
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the most important aspects of extraordinary leadership is the ability to inspire and motivate others to high performance. Zenger Folkman, I don't know if you know Jack Zenger and Joe Folkman, have done a tremendous amount of research in this regard, and they've looked at over 100,000 leaders around the world. And from their research and their data, they have shown that statistically, inspiring and motivating others to high performance is the most important aspect of extraordinary leadership. So it's one of those things that you'd say, well, that makes sense, because when I'm inspired and motivated, I do my best work. But as a leader, what is it that I actually do to inspire and motivate others? I'm sure your listeners have that question, like, how do I do that at a high level?
Exactly.
And the number one trait that they have uncovered is making the emotional connection. Similar to what I was just saying, leaders today need to sometimes push aside their performance metrics and all of their meetings and the policies and procedures and make the emotional connection with their people the most important thing. And one good way that I often coach my clients to do that is to go down and think about each person that's on their team and to assess how much of a relationship they have with each and every one of them, high, medium, or low. And how much trust is there in that relationship, high, medium, or low? And then to ask themselves, what can they do to invest more in that person emotionally? What can they do to connect with them in a way that maybe they don't have a connection today? It's amazing what comes up when you start to think about it at that level, as if it's one of the most important things you can do as a leader.
Okay, so having conversations with them and connecting with them on an emotional level.
Absolutely. Another thing that I think your listeners might be interested in is that the conversation around what inspires and motivates us doesn't happen very often in business today. We're expected to bring our own inspiration and motivation to our work, and absolutely the best employees are highly motivated. But it's fascinating how, as you go through life, what gets your attention changes. As you move from maybe a very young age to mid-age to older age, things that are important change. And so what inspires and motivates you today may be different. And good leaders stay in touch with what inspires and motivates their people by connecting with the changes that happen to them throughout their life. And so one way to do that is just to have a candid and curious conversation with their employees and team members about what currently inspires and motivates them. I find a lot of leaders miss this point because it seems like something that they feel like they don't need to talk about. But that's the problem. It is absolutely an emotional need for people to talk about what inspires and motivates them.
And you want people to also feel very comfortable sharing with you, because I may not feel comfortable sharing with you what motivates or inspires me if I don't trust you, which is what you alluded to at the beginning. You know, a big part of leadership is getting to people to connect with you, but also for them to trust you. In terms of what inspires you, it means you're getting very vulnerable about what you like and what you don't like. And you typically feel more comfortable sharing that information with people who you feel you can trust. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, it's just beautiful. I love the way you put that together. Without that foundation of trust that you're speaking of, Yanni, it is very hard to have a meaningful discussion about anything that's close to our heart, especially the things that inspire and motivate us. You're right. Vulnerability is absolutely a key. And it's one of those skills that I find a lot of leaders actually have to work at. It doesn't come natural. For some reason, it seems like we've learned that when we get into the business world, we actually become less vulnerable. We become more professional, so to speak.
Right.
And that's not what people are looking for. They're looking for your heart. They're not looking for your professionalism.
Yes. Amazing. All right. So those are some of the qualities that leaders must have. Now, why do you think leaders who are able to pretty much get a high level of productivity from their teams, right? There are some leaders who are not able to get that level of productivity. All right. So yesterday, let me give you an example. Yesterday, I had a friend that called me and she said that her hairdresser has an employee who the young lady does really, really good in terms of her technical skills is amazing. And the business owner cannot imagine this person not being in her business. However, when I spoke to the owner, she said to me, the lady's interpersonal skills are extremely poor. She doesn't know how to talk to people. She says things that comes over to be very disrespectful. The clients don't really like dealing with her, but she, the business owner, cannot imagine her business without this person in it. And so she wanted to know if I think training could fix this person. So from a leader perspective, if you got a call like this from a person like this, what would you recommend? Curious to hear.
Yes, I love it. I'm curious to hear what you said too.
So I'm going to let you speak first because you're my guest, and then I'll tell you what my response was.
Absolutely. Well, my gut says that I'd like to have more information about this employee. However, just the way that you pose the case study, it sounds as though the employee has been able to perform their job without meeting some of the expectations of the job around treating the customer with respect and communicating with them at a high level. And so if someone's gotten away with underperforming in a certain aspect of their job, it really, to me, it seems to land on the business owner in this particular case. And the question I would have to her is like, are you willing to hold her accountable to a higher level, a higher standard of interaction with the customer? If they're not, I wouldn't even waste the time on doing training or coaching or anything like that. I think it starts with the business owner establishing clear expectations with all employees, not just this employee, about how customers will be treated and the customer experience, and then literally holding them accountable. And if people can't do what we expect them to do and we think they're valuable employees, then yes, training could be helpful, but only after expectations have been set and after they attempt to hold people accountable to those expectations. What were your comments to her?
So I asked a series of questions. I asked her, how long was she working with her? Before she hired her, did she get a background check to get any recommendations for how it is that she performed in previous employment? To which she said no, she didn't have that. But then the young lady was working with her already. So to some extent, there is really no recovery where that is concerned because you have firsthand how it is she's performing in any case. Then I said to her, I think if it sounds to me like some of the challenges you're having is not necessarily with her competence to do the job, but her attitude. And if you've spoken to her and you've indicated to her that this type of behavior is not acceptable, your customers are not in agreement with how she's responding to them, and she still continues to repeat the same behavior, I'm not sure if any amount of training is going to help, because at the end of the day, she has to make a intentional effort to ensure that her communication is one of the standard that you are expecting her to deliver to customers, even if she's the greatest shampooer or whatever the technical competence is required, to ensure the customers walk out feeling that the service they came for was good. But with that tangible service comes the soft side of it. Did she pull my hair too hard? When she was speaking over me, was she speaking too roughly to me? Did she ask me questions in a tone that was just, not very accommodating? All of those things contribute to the entire experience, even if when you're washing the hair, you give it a really good wash. If how you're doing it is poor, then it takes away from the whole service experience. So that was really my issue. My concern was that if it's an attitude issue, I'm not sure training can fix it.
That's right. I couldn't agree more. I was hoping that you might be going that direction. It's very difficult to train for attitude, and if it is an attitudinal problem, as you suggest it might be, I think training can be a waste of time. I did a lot of training and development throughout my career for over 20 years, and I was always amazed at how little behavior change followed training. And I think a big part of it was what you're saying, is that if people don't want to change, if they don't want to do something at a better, higher level, they won't, no matter how much training we actually give them. So you're onto something. There's no doubt. Training does not make people change. People make people change. And I think that's the hardest part of leadership, and that's the hardest part of customer service, is that our behaviors have to change to do it at a high level.
Right.
And have you read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear?
I have, yes. It's an excellent book.
Isn't it good? I hope that your listeners will get a copy of that. I think James Clear does a great job talking about our habits and what you can do to change them. And if you want to be a great leader, or if you want to be a great customer service manager or great at customer service, it does require us to get better. And that means, to me, changing habits. That book can be very helpful.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the reality is our success is based on the habits that we have. So the habits that you build upon every single day. I recently did a podcast interview. Sorry, it wasn't a podcast interview. It was a Facebook Live. And the guest was talking about changing habits. And one of the questions he asked me, which was so profound, Don, he said to me, you notice how since coronavirus and the pandemic, everybody has basically had to develop a new habit overnight, wearing of masks? Because I'm sure you were not wearing a mask prior to March the 13th, right?
Correct.
So then he says to me, where do you keep your mask? So I said, to be honest with you, I keep it in my car because over the first few weeks, I kept on leaving it. I would reach to my destination and I would be like, why do I feel out of place? And then I'm like, oh, I left my mask at home and I'm not going to turn back to get it. So in order to ensure that I always have it, I keep it in the car because I'm not wearing it anywhere else. I'm not wearing it at home. So it's clearly when I'm going on the road. And he said, you are able to develop that habit because you built it on top of other habits that you have, so that you could ensure that it now became a part of your routine. And, when I looked on it from that perspective, I said, that's a very good point. Because I had to find a way to incorporate this into my normal activities to ensure that it became, as he said, a part of my routine. Where do you keep your mask, Don?
In the car as well. I love your comment about habit stacking. I think that's one of the things that James Clear points out. Like, if you stack your habits, it's a much easier way to start a new habit rather than starting it all by itself, because it needs some way to get going.
Yeah.
That's why habits are so hard. What's the old saying about old habits are strong and jealous?
True. If you're accustomed to doing something for a very long time. And the reality is human beings, they put up a lot of resistance to change.
Yes.
When it's new, it's like, why should we do it this way? I mean, even with these virtual experiences that we're all having now, predominantly my business has been operating from home for quite some time. Even before COVID, I decided to get rid of my office space and just operate from home. And so even when COVID came in, it wasn't a hard adjustment for me to start working from home. But people who are accustomed to going into an office from 9 to 5 every day, I've spoken to quite a few of my friends and even colleagues who say they don't necessarily like working from home. They prefer the blended approach, or they want to go back out to work because they miss the interaction. And the reason I think they're saying that is because it's new, it's different. They're not accustomed to it. It makes them feel uncomfortable. And that, that change makes it very difficult for us to adjust. But then I've had clients who said that they've actually had a higher level of productivity from their team members since they've been working from home versus when they were physically in the space.
Yes, I fully understand what you're speaking of. And I think we're seeing such a rapid change in the way that we do work. It's amazing. I want to go back to what you said about attitude. I want to make sure the listeners really get the power of this. I also had a recent customer service experience where I was going through a fast food line at a restaurant to get some dinner for our grandkids. And as I was doing that, I recognized right away that the speed of the service was very good. And I was very pleased with how quickly they were able to take my order and get me my food. But I also noticed there was something else that was happening that really delighted me. And it was an experience where the individual who was taking my order was willing to be personable with me and ask me some questions, and also allow me to ask them some questions, because there was a little bit of a wait time before I could move on to the next point in the service line. And I really enjoyed that because we became human with one another. There wasn't just an order being placed and an order being received. Mm-hmm. It was two people talking. And I thought, this young person has a great attitude, back to your point, of service, because they wanted to connect with me. And I just thought that was so powerful. I can't underestimate the power in customer service of people being interested. And I love the word curious. And that's good for the curiosity word is so good for all of us, leaders as well as customer service providers.
True. Very true. So Don, you are working in leadership every single day, and you have to be interacting with different personalities. How do you stay motivated every day?
A great question. It's very simple for me, and maybe it won't even resonate that much with your listeners, because I'm going to give you an answer. It's called purpose. I believe that my purpose in life is to change the world one leader at a time. And what I'm trying to do, Unique, is bring greater, better leaders into the world, because the world right now desperately needs good servant leaders that can bring a higher level of performance in all aspects of our society. We're so desperate for people to be peacemakers and to find ways for the world to live more in harmony, where we can take care of each other. And so my purpose shows up every time I wake up in the morning and I'm getting started to begin my day. I live my life to be on purpose. And even during the difficult periods where maybe there's challenges that I didn't expect, or challenges with certain clients or client situations, I don't let it get to me, because I recognize that it's one aspect of me being able to fulfill my purpose. It's not a difficulty that I need to dread. It's just something I need to work around so that I can fulfill my purpose. And I think every time that I'm on purpose, and I can tell you live your life on purpose, I'd like to hear how you frame your purpose, Unique. I think doesn't it make such a huge difference in terms of the way that you do the work that you do?
It does. It's funny you said that, because when I started this business back in 2007, 2008, I started it because I thought about what it is that I really like to do. But I also started it because I also thought about, in Jamaica, which is where I live and, I was born and I've spent all of my life, customer service is challenging. So Jamaican people are extremely warm and friendly. But I find that in a lot of the service businesses, you don't necessarily get that warm and friendliness. It's almost like you feel like you're begging them to serve you. And so I started to think, how could I contribute to improving the quality of service in Jamaica and globally? And I started to think about a cartoon that I used to watch when I was a little girl called Care Bears. I don't know if you know it.
Yes, I've seen it.
So my vision for the company is to create a more caring world. And it was inspired through the Care Bears. If I could be a Care Bear, with that little beam on my tummy, and I'm beaming this light out to basically, as you said, to change one leader at a time, but to change each company or each team member at a time, that they're converted to ensuring that in every interaction they have, whether they stay at that company that I train them in, or they leave and start their own business, or they go and work for someone else, they always ensure that they deliver a high quality of service. Because I think if our service experiences improve, we'll all have a better quality of life. You'll go through the day and you'll feel like, oh my goodness, I had a great day today. I had such good interactions. People were so accommodating. Things ran so smoothly. And of course, if you have less obstacles, then, you'll be less stressed. So that's really my purpose every day, to create a more caring world. And I'm that Care Bear that's basically trying to beam my little light across on everyone. So yeah, I do get you when I say it's all about your purpose.
It's all about your purpose. And thank you for having that purpose, too. What a beautiful way to live your life and to be a role model for your area. Hopefully your listeners are like, I get that. I understand exactly why you're doing that. I sometimes find people will say, well, I'm glad you have that purpose, but that's not my purpose.
Yeah.
I always say, well, find your purpose. You don't have to have my purpose.
Exactly. Just figure out what it is that really drives you, because Don, there are days, I talk to people many times and they say to me, how do you get up and do the same thing every day? I mean, don't you get bored of it? Don't you get frustrated? But I don't, because I understand what my why is, and it drives me every single day. Every article I read, if I watch something on TV, if I'm talking to someone, it all goes back to service, how we serve each other. And so I'm always looking for opportunities. I'm always stimulated. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not excited about doing something new in the customer experience spectrum. So I think at the end of the day, if you're really passionate about what you're doing, then of course it doesn't seem like work, and you don't get demotivated. Or on days when your energy might not be there, you still have some desire to want to do it because you're really passionate about it.
I often will do some self-coaching, as you kind of talk to yourself in your own head. And I will always say, when I feel like there's a level of frustration or demotivation, or just, the challenge of getting through everyday life, I'll say, Don, get on purpose, get back to your purpose. If you feel like you're frustrated, that means that you're just not paying enough attention to your why, as you just called it out.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your listeners in Jamaica and around the world are like, thank you for what you do. Without doing what you do, Unique, other people would not be telling this story. So this is why what you do is so powerful.
Yeah, thank you. So, Don, can you share with us what's the one online resource, tool, website, or app that you couldn't live without in your own business?
It's such a tough question because I use so many.
You could give us maybe two.
Sure. I was going to recommend to your listeners to go to Zenger Folkman, ZengerFolkman.com, because they have so many resources around leadership. There are many, many theories about what makes a good leader, and there are many, many books around leadership. It's like a giant ocean, and I find it overwhelming. And many of my clients say, Don, I don't know what to do. There's too many things for me to focus on as a leader, and I completely get that. And so what I often say is like, well, why don't we do a 360 and get some feedback from the people that you lead, including your boss and your peers, and let's ask them how you lead today and get their feedback. And Zenger Folkman has this wonderful 360-degree assessment that allows leaders to get an accurate perception of how other people see them as a leader. With that, then you can determine how to put together an action plan to build new skills or to build the strengths that you currently have. And so they've written a lot of great articles and white papers about that, and all of those things reside on their website. I would highly recommend that they do that.
All right. So we will definitely have the link to that resource on the show notes of this episode. So any of our listeners who tapped into this episode can definitely tap into that resource. Brilliant. So I know you mentioned one book already, which I fully endorse, Atomic Habits by James Clear. But are there any other books that have had a great impact on you? Maybe a book you read recently, or even a book you read a very long time ago that has still had a great impact on you?
Unique. I don't know if you read like I do today. I used to read a whole book. I don't hardly do that anymore. I often read the first chapter, the last chapter, and then I'll skim read around the middle of the book a bit.
You're a speed reader.
Perhaps. But a book that I cannot seem to put down, I go back to repeatedly over and over, is a very simple book, but it's called Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Bradbury. I bet you have it.
Yeah, I do.
What a great resource. One, because it gives you that self-assessment in the back of it, so you can go online and take a self-assessment to kind of determine your emotional intelligence level. But two, because it gives you 66 great suggestions of how you can build your emotional intelligence through new behaviors or changing your behavior. Mm-hmm. And I love that because it's very application oriented. I love books that can get me to move in a direction that allows me to be a better person, better leader. So I think Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Bradbury is one of those resources that your listeners could greatly benefit from.
Agreed. All right. So we'll definitely have those in the show notes of this episode as well. All right, Don, could you share with us what's one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're either really excited about, something maybe that you're working on to develop yourself or your people?
Thanks for asking. It's a wonderful question. I really have been inspired by our conversation today about purpose, and I'm trying to put together a master class on how to discover your purpose, because I found many people, Yonik, they haven't had the fortunate experience you and I have had where they actually have been able to define what it is. It seems to me that most people say, I'm not exactly sure what my purpose is, and I don't know how to find it. What's the best way to decide that? Purpose is hard to discover. It is certainly something that is discoverable, but it doesn't just plop into your lap because you say, I need to know my purpose. It takes quite a bit of work and effort and reflection and searching and soul searching. And I just would like to help people in the future with a master class of some sort where they could have a methodology to be able to discover what their purpose is.
That sounds brilliant. So how far along is that masterclass? Because I'm sure I could recommend it to quite a few people.
I've got the outline. I'm just trying to figure out actually testing some of the things that I've put into the outline with some people that are in that stage of discovery, and asking them to give me feedback like, was this helpful? What worked? What didn't work for you? And I find that the discovery process for purpose seems to be pretty highly customized. So I'm having a tough time finalizing the approach because I think it has to have enough options to it, a variability to allow people to kind of modify the process to their personality and their style.
Right. Do you have a Facebook group, Don?
I don't. I almost do everything through LinkedIn. I would be glad to.
Do you have a LinkedIn group?
I don't have a particular group that I have sponsored yet. Maybe that's what I need to do with purpose, right?
Yeah, that would be a great idea because then you would definitely be getting people who are specifically aligned with what you are trying to achieve. And then definitely you'd be talking to the right people.
Thank you for that suggestion. I appreciate that. It was so obvious that I didn't even think of it. Sometimes that's how we help each other, right?
Agreed. Sometimes it's right there in front of you, and then just because it's reframed in a different way, you're like, oh my goodness, that's like blinding flash of the obvious.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for helping me.
You're welcome. Now, Don, let's say our listeners listen to this episode and they're like, I want to find out more about this Purpose Masterclass. I'd like to purchase Don's book. I kind of want to follow Don and see what he's doing in his journey and connect with him. Where can they find you online?
Certainly, my website is donfrericks.com. And of course, LinkedIn, I'm very active on. And if they sent me a request on LinkedIn, I'm certainly going to respond to that rapidly.
All right. So LinkedIn and your website, donfrericks.com. So before we wrap up, could you share with us a quote or a saying that during times of adversity or challenge, you'll tend to revert to this quote because it kind of helps to keep you refocused?
It's interesting that I read this right before we got online together today, and it's often called the Serenity Prayer. I think it's actually a great quote, but it's about helping reframe the things that we cannot change and the things we can change, and helping ourselves stay focused on the things that we can change and trying to find the strength to do that. It's easy to get spun up today in the way that all the world is demanding attention, and the unrest and the racism that exists and all the frustration that people are experiencing with the pandemic. And many of those items we cannot directly change, but what we can change is our attitude and our emotional attachment and what we get involved with and what we don't get involved with. And I think one way to make the world a better place is to focus on the three things that you stand for, Unique, is the live, love, and laugh. And, right, if you bring that out, that's something that we can all control, right?
Yeah.
How we live, how we love, how we laugh. And so I think the Serenity Prayer to me makes all kinds of difference. And it's a good reminder to focus on what we can control.
Awesome. So we'll also put the Serenity Prayer in there. It's actually a prayer that I revert to from time to time as well. It reminds me of the law of attraction. Whatever you think about comes about. So if you really put these affirmations and record or repeat these different positive things on a daily basis, you're actually intentionally feeding your mind with positivity and not focusing on all the things that, as you said, you don't really have any control over. So you really want to focus on the things that you can control and try to be a positive agent of change in those areas.
You said it so beautifully. Thank you for saying that. And thank you for asking the question. You're bringing great love into the world. And so I hope that you can keep doing that and be the light for the whole world.
Great. Thank you. So Don, I just want to say thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you said you're there waiting for your brand new bundle of joy. Is it a granddaughter or grandson?
It's a granddaughter. We have two grandsons, so this is our first granddaughter.
Oh my goodness. So she's going to be really spoiled because
yes.
Grandpas love their granddaughters.
Yes, they do.
So I want to congratulate you again.
Thank you.
And so thanks, Don, for just hopping in on with us today. We know you're busy, and we appreciate you taking the time to share with us. We're going to have all of the different links for the different resources, your book, your website, the tool that we can use to do the 360 to get an understanding if you're a better leader. We're going to have all of those in the show notes of this episode. And if you guys want to follow Don, his contact information will also be there for LinkedIn and his website. So thank you again, Don, for taking time to share with us today.
Thank you, Unique.
So until next time, please feel free to hop on over to Twitter, follow us at Navigating CX, and feel free to join our private Facebook group, Navigating the Customer Experience Community. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. Thank you for listening to Navigating the Customer Experience. If you'd like to connect with us even more, please feel free to hop onto Facebook and join our private Facebook group, Navigating the Customer Experience Community. And of course, feel free to follow us on Twitter at Navigating CX. We also have a new book available on Amazon, The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience. It's available in ebook and paperback. So if you want to increase revenue in your organization, build a stronger service culture, and create employees or develop employees who are really mastering service delivery in your business, you need to grab a copy of this book. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.